You ready?
I'm ready.
What is up, everybody? This is Joe Adams, and welcome to the Relentless Pursuit Podcast. What we do on this podcast is bring in guests from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, to share their journey and everything along the way that led them to where they're at today. So if that is for you, you want to hear something that'll make an impact, you want to hear some amazing stories, then check this out, like, subscribe, all those wonderful things. And if that is not for you, I don't know what your problem is, but you need to jump on board today. Like that.
Love that. Perfect intro.
Yeah, just being a little aggressive. I got to throw that in. Anyways, but without further ado, I would love to introduce today's guest, Mr. David Compton. Yeah.
I expect like the dog clicker.
Woo.
There we go.
The spikes are going to, people are like, oh God, shots fired. But David, welcome, dude.
No, welcome. Thank you for having me on, and appreciate the connection to get to meet you as well.
Yeah, man. I'm stoked to have you here. Where'd you drive from?
I live between Knoxville and Chattanooga, a little town called Sweetwater. I'm actually from Madisonville.
Nice, dude. Oh, that's not too far from here. An hour and a half or so.
2 hours and 45 minutes.
Oh, damn. Probably some back roads. Yeah, you're probably down some back roads. I was thinking like because Knoxville takes like 3 hours from here, 3.5.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, and I'm like 40 minutes from Knoxville.
Okay.
So not too bad.
Yeah, so you're in that middle spot. There's not like really any straight interstates to get there.
I'm in that gray area.
Yeah. It's pretty out there though.
It's beautiful. I live right beside the Cherokee National Forest. So Bald River Falls and all that area. We actually put a race on up there called the Cherokee, but we live in just a beautiful area right there. There's so much you can do outdoors, and I'm like an hour from Chattanooga, 45 minutes from Knoxville, so I got like the best of both worlds there with being able to go to trails and do whatever I need to do. So
that's awesome, man. Hell yeah. Well, for those of you wondering how we got connected is through a past guest, Mr. Chris Stamen. Chris is amazing. I need to catch up with him soon. Chris has a wonderful story. He does ultra marathons, ultra marathon running and whatnot. So he's in that world. So by nature, David is also a part of that world. And you and I just shout out to you, Chris, dude. We were talking about you, like such a top-notch individual.
Absolutely. All good stuff.
Yeah, dude. Love that, man. So glad you came on, and so glad for the connections you brought. That said, you and I became friends on Facebook, and we just like comment on each other's stories every once in a while, or a thumbs up or something. And I was like, dude, you need to be a guest.
Just watching the burpees, man.
Watching the burpees, firing you up.
I hate burpees.
It's my thing.
I'll run.
Yeah. See, I had to think of something to replace running because all my nerve damage in my legs, and it's like my mechanics are all jacked up, so it's like pretty painful after a little bit.
I cannot imagine.
Yeah, it's weird. So like, it's not that I don't like. I actually used to love running, and then burpees just magically was the thing I decided to take on.
Like, how did it become burpees though? Like, is that something that just naturally happened, or have you always just liked burpees?
No, never liked them.
Yeah.
And then last year I was training, and I was like, man, I need to throw some burpees in this workout, dude. Get my heart rate up or something. I don't know. And so I just did a bunch of burpees.
How long's the streak?
I'm at almost 60,000, 58.5. Yeah,
dude, that's insane.
Going for $1 million.
You'll get there. I have no doubt. I see them every day.
It'd be like a 10-year pursuit. Either way, we're going to hit that number. Yeah, dude, it's just become this thing, and I think it's just there's a lot of things that circle around it. I think forcing yourself to do something you don't necessarily like, I think that just is a positive thing for anybody to get adapted to, because you're going to have to do that at a certain point in your life regardless. And then, it's just consistency, discipline. It's just a lot of things it embodies, because I don't know, to the point to where like, if there's a day like I don't really have time to lift or whatever, I'm like, dude, I got to get my burpees in, and I got to let myself rest too, because I'll knock out so many at once. And yesterday I felt like ass, dude, and I think it's from traveling nonstop, but so I didn't do them, but I'm hitting my number today and just keep it rolling, man. So it's my thing.
I mean, I give you kudos, man, because that's the thing. It's like finding something that you don't want to do, but you force yourself to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's discipline.
Oh yeah.
Like that becomes like a thing that helps you to, when stuff does get hard, like you can do it.
Exactly. Well, apparently, scientifically, it keeps you cognitively sharp at an older age.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I didn't really know that. Someone kind of shed light on that, and I was looking into it, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Like forcing yourself to do something you don't like every day can help you when you're older.
Yeah, and there's actually some studies. Girlfriend was telling me about this, but there's some studies like cold plunge, stuff like that.
We got that here.
Burpees be one too, but like stuff that you truly like do not want to do, like you hate it.
Yeah.
It also, in a way, helps you live longer because it teaches your body to like the flight or fight.
Yeah.
Response and all that.
Yeah.
So it teaches you. Now, eventually, if it becomes something that you enjoy, you don't get that. Benefit from it, but that's where you continue, just like all of us, that pursuit of finding hard things.
Yeah, 100%, man. Hell yeah. Well, I want to dive into your story. Excuse me.
Don't worry, it's my second one.
Yeah,
I'll go here shaking it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Amped up on the RP pod. So David, real quick, and then we're going to take it back because we got to get the journey. Just tell everybody what it is that you do. Keep it brief. Like, yeah. What are you doing in your life today?
Today. So I work for a company called Arconic, used to be Alcoa Aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a supply chain superintendent there. So I create like the metal plan, order all the metal. So I'm kind of in the whole supply chain piece for, getting metal to the plant so that we can make what we need. So, you can imagine some of that's hectic right now, especially during COVID. But the other piece became we started East Coast Adventures back in 2020. So a big part of that now. That's how I actually met Chris. Was through some of that through ultras, but also we started East Coast Adventures, which is our race company. It's nonprofit where we put on events. We started it in 2020, and then last year we started a team.
Okay.
Called Nobody Cares Run Faster. And Chris is actually a part of that team.
Yeah.
So, he that's how me and Chris really got to spend more time together, and I got to learn him and, just made a lot of great connections through all that. But, got a 16-year-old daughter too that she just started driving, and, she's a golf player, she's a basketball player, and finally, at the age of 16, she's going to try track for the first time. So, yeah, she's going to try that in the spring. So I'm kind of excited. But and then been in a relationship with Mary for 2 years now. She's also my running coach.
Oh, nice.
And but she's absolutely amazing. And we'll get through that story later. But long road to learning all the mistakes and ins and outs of marriage to make you appreciate where you're at today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the person you're with. But, that's a little bit about me. I'm definitely an ultra runner. For most people that don't know that, I mean, I've my longest distance so far is, I did the Vol State race, which is a 500K, 314 miles across the state of Tennessee.
Good God. I think Chris said he did that one.
He did.
Or he's about to.
Yeah, he did do that one.
Yeah. Dude, that's nuts.
We did it at different times, but we both did it. I did it in like 5 days. I'll tell you that experience is something that I'll never forget.
We're going to dive into that.
Yeah. I mean, man, you wake up and like nothing in your life, everything that you thought was like so important to you as far as like your job, your money, like your house, your home. I mean, you wake up and all you're worried about is where am I going to find my next bottle of water?
Yeah.
Like you wake up and you're thirsty and you're like, okay, where am I going to find my next bottle of water? Where am I going to find food? How am I going to get there? Like, how long is it going to take me? And, it brings you really down to like a different level of just truly being, I mean, you get a bottle of water, dude, it's like you won the lottery.
Yeah. I can imagine, man. Well, I think forcing, putting yourself in those situations, especially voluntarily, you're building so much resilience there, but you're also like are able to appreciate just something so simple.
Yes.
It breaks down to like you said, you shed all those, the house and all these different things, these material things, but you realize like the value in just something simple as a bottle of water and like,
yes,
the need for it. And you're like, that's all I care about. Like, yeah.
I mean, it's truly remarkable to get to the point like you don't think about paying your bills. You don't, it's you're living in the present.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing in itself. Like if you don't get to do that, you need to find something that makes you be present.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Dude, I love that. Well, we're going to dive into that more because the mindset and whatnot that it takes to even put yourself in that. So, but that said, before we dive into what's happening now along those lines, take us back, man. Take us back to, the young days of David. Where are you from? A little bit about your upbringing and whatnot and experiences there that kind of molded you.
Yeah, so I grew up in Maryville, actually one of your other guests.
Yeah.
Matt Blankenship.
Yeah.
So I know Matt. I actually worked with his brother, still work with his brother some, Bo.
That's so cool.
But yeah, Matt's a great guy.
Yeah,
so I watched some of that podcast as well.
Matt's a good old boy.
He's awesome. But yeah, I grew up in Maryville. I grew up on a street where both sets of my grandparents, a couple of cousins all lived. So like this whole street was like part of my family. So I just get on my bike and ride up and down the street and spend time with, grandparents, my, uncle, my cousins, like whatever,
How was that?
It was pretty cool. Like, it's one of those where you just jump on the bike back in the day. Like, when we were growing up, like jumping on your bike and pedaling around the neighborhood was not an issue.
No, it's like normal.
So like we'd be gone for hours, dude, just riding our bikes and spending time with family.
The street light comes on. That's when like I got to be home.
Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then every now and then your parents would find you in a spot you weren't supposed to be and you'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool. Like, part of my family is on my mother's side. They're the Gregories, and a lot of them are from the Cades Cove area.
Okay.
So my great, I get confused sometimes. My great grandfather is actually Gregory's Bald was named after him.
Nice.
So he died up there on that bald during the war back in the day. But
my wife and I got married there.
Did you really?
Yeah. That big tree.
Yes.
With the little the headstones.
Yep.
Yeah, we got married like right by that.
Oh, that's a small world, man. That's cool. So yeah, when you're at Cades Cove, like all of the Gregories up there, all the tombstones, like that's part of my mother and grandfather's family. So they all grew up in Cades Cove, but they moved to Maryville, and then that's where I grew up. And then I got a brother. He's a couple years older than me. Me and him, man, we fought like dogs all the time. Like it was just always fighting. But that's some brothers just do that. Like there was no hatred. It was just like, dude, we would get to wrestling.
Yeah.
And then we would just turn into fighting.
You're like, dude, how do I kill this guy?
Yeah, right. And him being the bigger brother, he always won.
Yeah.
But it was fun, just growing up like that. Having your cousins right near you, you always were playing. Like when we played hide and seek and stuff like that, it was the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like, it was awesome. Like,
that's awesome, dude.
It was so fun. But, I grew up, went to Maryville High School or Maryville Middle School. And, my parents were, my mom didn't really work. She was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad worked, but he was gone all the time. So he traveled. He was only home on Saturdays and Sundays. And so basically, I spent a lot of time with my uncle and my grandparents and my mother and my brother. And, just kind of like learning from them. But when my dad was home, he was a big hunter and fisher. He was a big sportsman. Yeah. So he was always taking me and my brother hunting, fishing. My uncles and my grandparents, the same way. My grandfather, he taught me a lot. Just growing up with him, he was one of those guys that just could do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You want to rebuild an engine, rewire your house.
Yeah.
He could just do it. And
he didn't need YouTube.
Right. And I learned so much from him. And Mary, my girlfriend says it all the time. She's like, you're like one of the smartest people I know. And I'm like, not really. I just learned how to do this stuff, like, because that's what my grandfather did.
He just constantly showed you new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad's similar in that way. Like, I mean, if they wanted to do something, they just start building it.
Yeah. Figure it out.
And, that's kind of how I am. I just kind of adopted that from them. And that's always been like my thing is I don't have to have an answer. Mm-mm. But I'll figure it out.
I'm right there with you, dude.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like you can't be scared to jump in, and I learned that from them. I also took some good and bad from all of that. Like my dad wasn't home all week. So like with my daughter, I always tried to make sure that I spent time with her the whole time she was growing up when she was little, like that I was present and I was there. And that was something I took away from that is like, I don't want to be the guy that's gone 5-6 days a week.
It's interesting you talk about that. I was having a discussion with my friend Rick about this. He was firefighter 30 years, also did like construction stuff, like constantly working, right? And, in his mind, it was like, because I was talking about like being an entrepreneur, build my business, and like volunteering out in the mountains to help people, because I feel like that all essentially helps my family. Like it all circles back around to my wife and daughter, whether it's volunteering because energetically that has a positive, lasting impact, right? In my mind.
Yes.
And it's also set an example for my family and so on. It's important, but also like building my business is like, I got to provide for them. And, and I was talking to him, I was like, it's for them. He's like, man, I told myself that as a firefighter and I was always working, and it's for my family. It's for my family. He said, but you realize like your family needs most of your time, like
absolutely.
That's the most valuable thing you can get them. And I think as men, we're engineered to be providers and protect them and fight. So like we justify that, like, hey, I'm working all the time, but it's for these guys. And that's admirable. But then like you, I don't want to be absent. I'm very intentional about my relationship with my family, and I want to be with them. I don't want to miss shit, because I also understand like how quickly it can be gone, from
100%.
Yeah. So it's like
at the end of the day, your family isn't going to really remember you for the hours you worked.
No, they're not.
They'll be thankful.
Yeah.
But they're going to remember you for what you did with them, like the memories that you shared with them and the stuff that you did, and like how you loved them and you were there. I mean, and I think, for different people, they feel differently about that, which I totally understand. Like for some people, that is how they show love.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
They're never going to say it. They're just going to work. And that's my dad.
Mm-hmm.
That was 100% my dad. He to this day, he will not tell you he loves you at all. But he will work his ass off for you.
Yeah, that's cool. That's how he shows it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to learn that. You have to learn that. I just my dad, real quick, like an example. I buy a house after my second divorce, started completely over. Air conditioner went out in the first month that I bought the house, like just completely wrecked.
Yeah.
And
cheap fix.
And my dad is that's what he does. He's great. He does heat and air. And I mean, next thing I know, he put it in by himself over the weekend, like to say, just like he was like, I got this, and he found me I got to be able to buy one through him, which was extremely cheap, and like he did the whole thing himself.
Nice.
But that's how he shows you.
Yeah.
That he loves you.
Yeah, I mean, because that's like also a pricey, and if you were to do it yourself, it could take you some time, right? So
exactly.
No, that's awesome, man. I think it's just all perspective, right? That's how he shows it. I think over time we've kind of evolved to understand past things, and because you can't knock your father for it. I don't knock my father for being gone and working. Like, doing what he had to do for his family. Like, I respect the shit out of that. Yeah. As men, we're providers. Like, I believe in that traditional standpoint through and through, but now we had the capability to still provide and be more present. And
Absolutely.
I think like we're just learning a different way, because I don't know, it's not that they didn't understand, but like it's just how they were raised, and it's just generational things and conditions that kind of make us who we are, right? But our experience is different, way different than theirs.
Yeah.
And so like you and I agree on that. Like, we want to be with our family, present with them, like as much as possible. And sometimes it's hard to create that balance, because like for me, when I do own a business, right, it's all like I run every aspect of my business. So I have to, like, there's no one to be, hey, can you do this for me? Like, I got to get it done, but it just means I got to get up earlier so that way I can get home sooner and have that time. Or
it's all a balance until it's not.
Yeah.
At some point you realize that balance is way out of whack. And then that's when you make drastic decisions in your life, because you step back and you're like, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah.
Like there's been moments in my life where I'm like, how did I get here?
Oh man.
But I mean, and my dad, like he worked the whole time we grew up. So, me and my brother were close, and my mom, my My mom, I know we had to drive her nuts because we're always wrestling. She's trying to pull apart 2, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, you know.
She
like
get out
all
the wooden spoon.
Yeah, and, you know, yelling at us, putting us in time out because we're fighting, and we would break shit all the time. Like, you know, when I'm talking wrestling, like I'm talking hitting the walls, window, you know, like pictures, you know, but like we grew up watching wrestling too, so it probably didn't help.
Hey, that was good stuff.
But I also got to like spend time with my uncle who, you know, he wanted to lift weights. He would play video games with me. He was a hunter and fisher too.
Oh yeah.
You know, and like, you know, you learn things that you probably wouldn't have learned, you know, if I got more exposure, I guess, to more people. I spent time with my grandfather. You know, my grandfather, I'd get home and he'd be out there like sanding on the truck because he's going to paint his truck. You know, like, I mean, it was just like, so it was always cool just to, you know, you sit back, you don't appreciate that stuff till later in life. And you're like, oh, that's how I got here.
Yeah, so you were talking about having that exposure coming up. You know, I grew up in Georgia most of my life until I moved to North Carolina, but you know, we had family within an hour or so, whatever. I didn't have that kind of exposure though. Like, I think it's pretty fascinating. You know, you lived in such a small town that you had everybody pretty much right there on one street, essentially.
Yes.
And I think it's cool. You know, I moved to a very small town beginning of high school, and it was a good experience, but we were always like outsiders. Because small towns, it's just like that, you know, like, and I already moved a lot and I wasn't treated necessarily like such, you know, because fortunately, like at that time I had a huge growth spurt. So I was a football player. So I was an athlete and I, you know, made a lot of friends and whatnot, which is great coming from just being bullied a shit ton, you know, like from moving so much as a little kid. And, but it's just, there's always that circle of like, oh no, our families have lived here for like ever. Yes. So, you know, you're not us. And nothing against it. It's just funny, like moving into, like if had I moved to your town, it would have felt that way regardless, just because it's just, I think it's just different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Have you seen the new guy?
Dude, I haven't seen a new guy in a long time.
No, I was talking about like the neighborhood.
Okay.
Like, have you seen the new guy?
Okay.
You know, like,
what's his problem? Why is he dressed like that? No, but, yeah, that's a movie too, I think.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and there's a show called New Girl that I watch. It's pretty freaking funny. Anyways, but yeah, so it's interesting to hear your perspective, like coming up in that, as opposed to myself, you know, just moving around a bunch. And it's cool to share those different perspectives, right? Yeah. But I do appreciate, you know, that community aspect of like family, especially when it seems to me like most of your family were a positive influence on your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my dad, when I was real young, he was an alcoholic. And, you know, I don't talk about it much because I don't really remember a lot about it because I was so young. But he was I think he was a really bad alcoholic, but, you know, he just quit. You know, him and my mom, like, I don't know the whole details. I think she pretty much just told him, like, you either quit or I'm out.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's not had a drink of alcohol since.
That's good.
And, you know, and that's the thing. It's like some people are all in, and some people can moderate. And you know, if you're one of those people that are all in, then you just don't cross that line. And like he doesn't cross that line, you know.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And it makes it kind of funny every now and then because like I'll have beer or I'll have a drink or something, and my mom's just like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like,
you're like, Mom, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to the Frank to Think level. I'm good.
That was like earlier years, you know, like I definitely did that like in the military and shit, but yeah. Now I rarely drink.
But yeah, I don't generally talk about that one too much because I just don't really remember it. I was real young. But you know, like the
important thing is though, he changed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing to focus on. Like he made that positive change. So at the end of the day, that's a growth, man. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then, you know, in middle school is when my life kind of like really took a change.
Yeah.
And I was in 8th grade, and that's when we decided we were moving. So I think it was around my 7th grade year, my grandfather had terrible, massive heart attack in the woods hunting with my uncle. And he was in the woods when he had the heart attack, so they had to get him out of the woods. So my uncle literally like helped him walk out. My grandfather walked out of the woods with his, you know, their rifles and everything. He drives him all the way to the hospital. And he has like 7 bypass surgeries. So, like he's just about dies. Like, there are only 8 chances here. But like it completely wrecked him.
Yeah.
They were able to obviously save him, but it damaged, I think after the surgery and everything, the damage was so significant to his heart that like even to this day, like only I think 25% of his heart even works.
Damn. How old is he now?
He's upper 70s.
Nice.
Yeah.
So still rocking and rolling.
Still going. And he's got some issues, but overall, like, pretty good.
Oh yeah.
And but something changed in him after that. Like he couldn't work. He couldn't be outside in the heat for a while. It just took him a long time to ever get over that, and he never really got completely over it. Like he couldn't be outside for a real long time with your heart only being like 25%. But we all moved to Greenback. So my grandparents and my parents bought some property in Greenback that had 2 houses on it, and we moved to Greenback. And I was in 8th grade. So, dude, that was just a complete change in my life. And I know it was theirs too. And I'm so grateful for it because it changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
Because going from Maryville, which is a school of like 2,000-3,000 students just in the middle school, to going to Greenback, which is kindergarten through 12th.
Oh, so Greenback's small.
Yes.
Damn. Yeah.
My graduating class was like 42.
Dang, I thought I graduated with like 150 maybe.
Yeah. No, we're small.
Yeah.
But I met so many good friends. I met one of my lifelong friends there the very first year I was at Greenback. And it was just one of those things like you don't realize it at the time, but that was significant.
Yeah.
And like my parents still live there. I still live, maybe 20 minutes from there.
Okay.
I've moved a couple of times. I've lived in Maryville. I've lived in Greenback. I've lived in, Massville, which is where I'm at now. But, it was significant because like some of those people I still, like my friend Billy, I met him in 8th grade and like we're still lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like that was a trajectory in a good way, and it helped me to be better at what the person that I didn't realize I was even. Yeah. Because in a school that small, there's not all the noise.
No.
And like when you only got like 40 people in your class, you quickly can see who's the good, who's the bad. And like, and it was like just me and Billy. And I grew up with him. Basically, we was just back and forth at each other's houses. We were always like, it was funny. You would have these cliques at school, and everybody would talk about the cliques. Yeah. And it would be like they would invite me and Billy. And they're like, "Oh well, I'm sure Billy and David's not coming." I'm like, But so you go through high school, and I'm the skinniest. I'm the skinny guy. I'm the short guy. Yeah. And so I was like, I think even when I graduated, I was like 135, 140 pounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was little. And but my senior year, growing up in Greenback, like obviously you become close with everybody in your class.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of significant events that year that was just really like eye-opening. It makes you step back and realize how short life can be. But we had I had one friend that, I'm pulling out of my house, my parents' house, and I'm driving down the road, and I see a cop car and his car, and they're both on each side of the road, and smoke's pulling out of them. And I quickly just turn over there, and I get out, and I take off running. And
the smoke was coming out of his car?
Both cars.
Both?
They had hit head-on Highway 95, and it was a canine cop. So the canine was in the car, and my buddy, and they hit head-on. And they hit so hard that it threw them both off each side of the road. And I run over to my buddy, and he's just like completely like, just laid back, and his femur's like sticking out of his leg, and I'm like, and I don't have cell phone signal. Yeah. Cell phones back then were like,
it's not like
that's Star Trek, baby.
Yeah.
But someone had pulled up at that point, and they said, I'll just live right down the road. I said, go call the police right now and tell them there's a wreck. And I run over and look at the cop, and the cop just has like blood running out of his eyes, and it's coming down his face and like his mouth, and the dog is just like going crazy. Like I can't get near the car because he's just trying to like bite me, like protect.
Yeah.
But I don't really recall if the cop survived. Don't know what happened exactly in the whole wreck, but I'll never forget that event, because like that's something that when you're 17, 18 years old,
that's a traumatic thing to experience, man.
Yeah. And my friend healed up. It took him a long time. He was able to walk and, get back to it. And like to this day, even when he sees me, he just always is thanking me. And I'm like, dude, you have nothing to thank me for. You would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Like we're such a small school, like, everybody and like, the vehicles and I knew his vehicle, but man, it was just one of those things that make you stop and you're like, that could be anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, fast forward a few more months, we're getting really close to graduation. And one of my friends that when I grew up in high school and I hunted every weekend.
Yeah.
And like I said, my whole family. So me and my brother, man, we were just like, 16, 17-year-olds, we're out there like going in the woods, we're hunting. And we didn't have anybody with us, like me and him. We were boom, boom, boom. And, we'd load the boat up ourselves. We'd go put in and take off, bow hunting, muzzleloader, or whatever. And one of our friends, he was the same way, just die hard. He hunted all the time. We'd get out there and all shoot bows together and like archery and just loved it. And, that's the one. I don't miss hunting so much. I used to hunt all the time. But I do miss like the archery part, like just getting out there and just shooting your bow and like just focus.
I want to do that one of these days.
It's like, it's one of those things that we were talking about, I think before the podcast, but makes you present, like just you have to be present, and that's the thing. It's like you're right there. And, but we would all get out there and practice and shoot and they got into bow fishing. Yeah. So they were like out there and they were, my buddy, he's with another friend and they're up in the mountains. And, I get up the next morning and everybody's like, "Did you hear what happened to Worm?" And I'm like, "No." And, they fell asleep on the way home that night.
Damn.
And my friend was riding in the passenger seat and his friend was driving and he just fell asleep, like it was a mistake. Like it is what it is. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning. But just a freak accident, man. He fell asleep, went off the road, hit a mailbox, brick mailbox. The mailbox come through and hit him directly in the head. Like a huge section of the mailbox. And, at this point, like you're sitting in class and you're just like, this isn't real.
Yeah.
Like I just seen this guy like a weekend ago, like we were hunting.
Yeah.
And, we go to his funeral. And that was like the hardest thing at that point that I had seen because, I was prepared for, I knew he's not here. So you're building up to that, like you're trying to keep your composure, but they had an open casket and,
he got hit. You said he got hit with the.
Yeah. So he did not look like himself. And as soon as I saw him, man, I just lost it. Like my friend Billy was beside me. I was like, I think he lost it too. Like there was just nothing that, you're talking about a class of 40 people.
Yeah. Everybody, like most people were close.
Yeah. And, it was a hard day. It was sad. And like you're talking just a couple weeks for graduation. I knew his parents, I was out there shooting bows with his dad, like it's, it was sad. And it was one of those things that, you got the car wreck with Eric and then you move on to Worm. And it's just like, you just step back and you realize like life is so short, and like that really, at that point in my life, I didn't really know whether I was going to college. I had not even thought about any of that stuff, but immediately I was like, no, it's, we don't have a lot of time. Let's make sure we do something that we're going to be able to actually enjoy.
Yeah.
Because we're not guaranteed anything.
Oh yeah.
And, so, I graduated high school and go to jump into college and I go my first year and did not enjoy like what I was doing. So just completely quit that college and went to a new school. And, I ended up going and getting my degree in project management and I got a degree in graphic and design.
Okay.
So, like I do most of the artwork. I didn't do this artwork. Bex had someone create this one, but I do everything else. And it's just funny, like all, everybody was telling me, don't switch classes, stay where you're at, stay at this college. But like, it wasn't my passion. Yeah. I didn't enjoy it, and I knew that, and I felt that. But what I ended up doing was I ended up like working full time and going to college the entire time.
Yeah. So, and you stayed in those classes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was doing like weekends, I was doing evening classes, and just went and worked at Sea Ray Boats. Nice. And, I ended up working there for like 8-9 years. I was an engineer there, I was a supervisor there, I was a CAD drafting person, drafter for them. And, it just all kind of like worked out. And that's where I actually even met my first wife was at Sea Ray.
Nice, dude. There's a lot of different stuff going on in just like a little short time frame.
Yeah.
First of all, the loss, like, fortunately, your one buddy, he's good. Y'all still close. I hate to hear about that loss there. I didn't experience anything like that in high school, and it's, younger age. I mean, people go through those things, and but you don't expect those things to happen at all, man. I don't know. It's weird because you really don't expect shit to happen in life like that to you. It happens everywhere, but then some crazy shit happens. You're like, what? Like, yeah.
It's funny to hear a story and you're like, oh man, I can't believe that. But never in a million years do you ever think that you're going to be one of these experiences.
Like motorcycles. Like, I always expected to maybe go down, like part of it, and I was told like, oh, about wrecks and stuff, and you hear how common it is. But I never expected to be laying there like waiting on a life flight, and it's just like, hell, like, it's just kind of, even when you step back and you're like, anything can happen, then something happens, you're like, it still blows your mind.
Yes.
It's like still surprises you. It's weird. So I can see where that kind of just blew your mind at that, especially at that age, because you still don't have a full grasp on like life as like you do now, and wisdom and whatnot. You're just still going through your young years.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's hard to think about when you're 20.
Yeah.
But your mindset when you're 20 and your mindset when you're 40, they're completely different. Mm-hmm. Like, if you knew the stuff when you were 40, if you could go back when you're in your 20s, like, you'd be a completely different person.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But then again, like, I will say to this, I know we're on your story, but I think about who I was when I was 20 a lot and younger. Like, I didn't have, I went in the military because I liked discipline on my own and drive. And some things led to that. And then, and as I look at my life now, I'm so driven, I'm so passionate, and so just like, and it's crazy because that was never like that wasn't me before. And I'm like, man, like, if only I could like show that guy, but my wife was like, Joe, but you'd look up to who you are now. Like, that kid would, and it's just like, so even if I could go back and teach that person lessons, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be who I am today. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like, I just had to go through all the shit and be who I was for that time, and it's only been like the growth. If I could watch them now, like, yeah, sure, I'd be aged like dude, but I'm like, nah, you're on the right path.
And that's the thing. It's like, you're sitting here today from everything in your past.
Yeah.
So if you changed one thing,
I wouldn't be who I am.
Yeah. I mean, there's no telling what the change in direction would be. And it's interesting, like, even on the podcast we do with runners, like, something traumatic in their life happened, mm-hmm. and they started running to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if that one thing would have not happened, man, you wouldn't be here, like right here, right now, meeting these amazing people. And you wouldn't have done these huge feats of, athleticism that you're doing now. And it's so humbling to see that just one thing triggered that.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? And it's either for better or for worse.
Yeah.
A lot of times, man. So I don't know. It's interesting to reflect on that, man. I think it's just, that's what brings you back, though, to being present instead of looking forward. Like me, my whole thing with like, I want to be successful. I'm never going to be successful. I got to go. And then I just like really had to reel in and be like, nah, dude, you are, though. You got a beautiful family. Your business has an impact. Just a number of different things. Like, you were successful, just level that up. I had to totally re-gear what success was to me, because it was driving me crazy. I was becoming unhappy with anything I accomplished because I was like, nah, dude, I was only looking forward. But then it's all about the journey, man. And like, people repeat that over time, but like really sitting there and like looking at their journey and finding gratitude in every different aspect. even the worst parts of it, there's something to be grateful for there.
Yeah.
You know,
there's something to take away from it.
Like that loss was so hard for you, and it's heartbreaking, and no one should ever have to go through that. But all you know is that for an individual yourself, like, you can be grateful for the perspective that it gave you. You know what I'm saying? As hard as that is, like but I mean, it's the only way you can move forward, right? I mean, and I know hopefully that doesn't sound like wrong, but
no, you're spot on. And that's the thing is, like, when you're a teenager, most people haven't experienced loss. Not like that. Like, you know, you might have a great grandparent that passes away,
or somebody at school you didn't really know,
but not like you know, most of the time, or at least I hope, you know, most of the time it's not like a traumatic, life-ending, just freak accident or something that happens. And, you know, to have your best friend or one of your friends do that when you're still like 16, 17, 18, you know, sometimes you just don't know how to process that. You know, you don't know how to move away from it.
Yeah. And then, but then in another way too is like, man, you're also like, it's also an opportunity to carry his spirit with you a little bit throughout your life. Yeah. You know, I feel like people we lose, I think we take a piece of their spirit along with us. So it's also like, hey man, like, let that be fuel, you know, to pursue something higher and greater. Like, they're a part of you now. So that's a way I like to look at it, man. But hey, shout out to Worm, man. I don't know where that name came from. It's so country as hell, dude. Hey, baseball. Look at Worm over there. You know, like, I just picture like some 15-year-olds with a dip in, like, Worm, you know, like, hell yeah. But I mean, okay, so baseball, but yeah, Worm. I love it.
But yeah, man, he's you know, he was an awesome guy.
Oh yeah, man. So, and I know that could be difficult for you to tell. Even now I can see it.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those you don't really think about it till you start talking about it again, and you don't realize. But you know, it's at the end of the day, we're all just trying to be the best that we can, and like, you're learning from everything that are your life experiences. It's that journey, and you know, if that was part of the journey for us in that class, you know, it made us who some of us we are. It helped some of us become closer friends in other areas, and you know, I couldn't imagine being the parents, you know, having your kid just pass away in high school. And you know, we just had that happen recently in our local town. It's a runner, and you know, that's hard, man. I don't even have words. Yeah. I don't even think about if that was my daughter.
God. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we'll dive into that more because I'll talk about Pasca. It's a long story, but and his whole thing that he experienced with the loss of his son. But yeah, man, it's just crazy to think about, dude. But even then, him finding, I want to talk about it because he found forgiveness and gratitude and all in that, and it's a pretty powerful story. But it was impactful to me for sure. But yeah, just even then, like, imagine the loss of my daughter. But nope, no, thank you. Yeah. And let's you know, she's gonna live a long, healthy life. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. I just got to keep that maintained.
That's right.
But anyways,
well, and that kind of, you know, leads into this story is like, you know, I meet my first wife.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm working night shift as a supervisor. You know, I kind of moved around there. You know, I had multiple jobs. I worked for the corporate office, then ended up taking a job as a supervisor on the night shift, and met her. You know, we get married. She has, you know, I think I'm about 25 at this point. Like, I get married, and we hadn't been married long. I actually cut my finger off. I just skipped completely over that. So,
no shit. Where you at?
So, like, we're planning our wedding, and we're going to get married in Jamaica. So, like, just a month or two before the wedding, I cut my finger off helping my buddy Billy put hardwood floors down. Table saw accident. Oh, and it was not fun at all, obviously, but it also just changed the complete everything that we were doing. So we ended up getting married at locally. We threw something together, and it worked out great. Yeah. But, you know, what's crazy is, like, what was not what we expected. Like, she had endometriosis really bad, and she ended up having to go have surgery. She's having a lot of issues, and the doctor just comes out, and I'm sitting there with her parents, and the doctor's like, "Do you have a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Well, I just want to let you know, like, I don't know if you all thought about having kids, but she has about 3 months."
What?
And then it's going to be so bad again that we can't guarantee she'll have to go through a whole another procedure and surgery. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So she was like 5 months pregnant, or she had 6. Well, she has 3 months left.
No. She has 3 months that she can get pregnant.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. I was confused. I was like,
no. We just got married, and like she's doing this procedure, and then they come in there and they're like, hers, her endometriosis is pretty bad, blah 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 blah, and I think she had a cyst on her ovaries, something else, and they're like, we can guarantee that she can get pregnant in like the next 2 to 3 months. After that, don't know. So don't know if you've thought about having kids, not to put any pressure on you, but
you're like, oh, shoot.
So she wakes up and we have that conversation, and we're trying to have kids, and like, or having a kid, and she gets pregnant. Like, I think we're right at the 2nd, 3rd month right there.
Damn, nick of time.
Yeah. And, and our daughter's born, Callie, and, we have a pretty good marriage. But it just kind of slowly fell apart. It's, there's some blame on both sides. So, we're all human. We're all growing, leading up to that. But, at the end of the day, she was unfaithful, and, found all that out towards the end. It made it really hard. When you're dealing with something like that, you're like trying to understand, like, what did you do?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't so much her. It was like, what did I do to cause this? That's all I kept thinking about. Like, what did I do? But, and it's like you sit back and you think then, and it's some of like who I am now. Some of that comes from this, but it's like, I work night shift. I work 6 days a week. I work 60, 70 hours a week as a production manager at wherever, just trying to build my career. And I'm like, did my absence cause some of that? Like, I was home every night or every day. If I was on night shift, I was home every day. But like, did some of that cause that? So all that stuff's going through your head, and you're like, man, life is too short. I'm not going to do this no more. It's not.
Yeah.
And like now it's 40 hours, 50 hours, what I got to do. Like, I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to do things that I enjoy. And that, that kind of brought me to that realization that, like, work is good.
Yeah.
But it's not your pursuit. Like, that's not at the end of the day, that's not what life's about.
Yeah.
It's
for sure.
There's a whole lot more. And that awakened me for that. And it was a really hard experience to go through that, knowing that your significant other, the person you're married to, found another person.
Yeah.
And planned a life without you. And, so we go through this divorce.
It's a hard hit, man.
Yeah, we go through, and we're great now.
Yeah.
We're great now. Like, we co-parent great.
It's probably a little difficult at first.
Yeah, it was, with anything. But now we're fine, and we both realize that, that was a part of our life that was necessary.
How old were y'all?
I'm 41.
Well, how old were y'all at the time?
Let's see. We got married in 2008. I was 25. We got divorced in 2015.
But y'all were still young.
Yeah.
You still had a lot of growth there. I mean, 2008, I graduated high school.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I graduated in 2001.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, it's one of those where, like, at that point, I was just devastated. I was so upset, but I just focused on my daughter, and that was it. We like 50-50 custody. I was make sure I take care of my daughter. And like, anytime I had her, I was planning everything around her, and that was like the thing. And that end of that marriage was extremely toxic and extremely hard, and, made you very vulnerable, because you had to realize that, like, that person didn't want you.
Yeah. And then you're like, what do I need to do to fix myself?
Right. That's one of the things that, as humans, it's hard to ever feel like you've been rejected. It's a good way to say it, like you've been rejected. I mean, it's one of those where, you have self-doubt then. You're like, what did I do? And, I went through that for weeks, but at the end of the day, that kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And then anger sets in and other things. And you just got all these emotions going through. And it was about this time, like, the marriage was already getting to this point of, like, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And, I think that kind of, like, pushed it on over. You know, like that's what got her there.
Yeah.
But there was issues before that caused that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the things that you learn in life is like trying to understand, like, you know, communication was an issue, or we didn't see each other enough was an issue, blah, 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 blah. We didn't talk through our issues, you know, like, and there's all these things that you sit back and you think it's like, yeah, you know, she did that, but she did that to deal with the unhappiness of the marriage.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to learn to accept that. And around this time, like right before all this happened, I was trying to figure out, you know, me and my brother grew up lifting weights.
Yeah.
You know, that was it. Like my uncle lifted weights, my dad lifted weights, me and my brother lifted weights. So I, you know, at this time I'm lifting weights. Like you know, that's my thing. I always lift weights. I've never ran a day in my life. Like I didn't run.
Yeah.
But around
Look at you now.
Yeah. Well, around 2013, 2014, I started running like a mile. And it's so funny. I was looking at this the other day because I was trying to remember when I started running. And I would run like 4 miles a month. I'd run a mile at a time, like once a week or something like that. Yeah. And, you know, that's how I got started. But like in 2015 now, we fast forward and I'm like, I'm in this divorce, you know, just going through it real bad. And the running becomes more.
Yeah.
The running becomes more. My friend Mike, who's become, you know, another one of my lifelong friends, like he's like, dude, let's do a race. I'm like, race for what?
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, oh, let's do a race, like a trail race or something, you know. And so we ended up doing this half marathon trail race, and I just absolutely explode out there, you know, like I have no idea what I'm doing, and I just fell in love with it. But also what I fell in love with was I was out there by myself for hours dealing with these emotions.
Yeah.
You know, and like that helped me so much that like I think that's why I fell in love with running, because before it was running is fitness. I'm just running at 1.5 miles or something here and there, just trying to, you know, do it. But then I begin to see the mindfulness, the tranquility, the understanding of like, oh, I can work through some serious problems.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just worked from there. And I started running a little bit more and a little bit more. And, you know, I'm going through this divorce, and divorce lasts, you know, 6-7 months. It wasn't a great divorce. It was, you know, most of them aren't.
Yeah.
A lot of hard
course.
feelings. And, you know, and at that point, I'm just focused on my daughter. Well, then I meet, you know, later on, I meet the girl I dated in high school.
Just one girl?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, the girl I probably dated the longest.
Okay.
You know, like it, and we start dating, we get married, buy a house together, and, you know, it seems good. And then all of a sudden it's not. And that was a mistake. That was definitely a mistake on my part. I don't blame her at all, but it was my part. Like you feel, you know, you have this bad marriage where you feel like someone rejected you.
That was comfortable.
Yeah. So this was like comfortable, and, you know, we knew each other, and we just quickly fell into it, and we got married, and we were happy. And then all of a sudden we realized we were completely different people.
Interesting.
And, you know, I don't talk about this a lot, but this marriage was extremely toxic, very rough, and we had a lot of issues. And there was some love there, you know, just the love from the years of being together in high school and
you
some
cared
in
about
college,
each other,
you know?
yeah. But
and she had a daughter, I had a daughter. There were some parenting issues that, you know, we didn't see eye to eye. A lot of parenting issues. And I just never forget, like one day she had come home and she told me that she had been offered a job, and she was trying to decide whether or not to take it because it was going to be more hours and it was going to make it a little more difficult to pick the kids up. And like, dude, it just the switch went off in me, because I'd already been dealing with the toxicity of this relationship, and I'm getting to the point I'm running all the time trying to deal with it. And like, she's getting upset for me running, and, you know, she's talking about how unhealthy it is that I'm running so much. And I'm like, but I just remember, like, we're sitting in the kitchen, she's up walking around, I'm sitting in the kitchen, and she says that, and I'm just like, you should take the job and we should get a divorce. And she just stopped and looked at me, and she's like, "What?" And I was like, "Listen, I'm the most unhappiest I've ever been in my life." I was like, "This was a mistake." And she, you know, obviously extremely upset at me because, you know, we've been married now very short time. I think we were together a total of like 3 years.
She wasn't happy,
Right.
but it was like also hit with that kind of denial of it. Like, divorce is a big word.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Nobody goes into a marriage with like, hey, I'm gonna get divorced eventually.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I mean, we had just bought a house together.
Yeah.
You know, over the last year, I guess, you know, we had a lake house. We lived on the lake. You know, we had this life that we kind of poured in together with 2 kids, and there was just a lot of issues that I didn't see.
Mm.
And then even,
or you didn't want to see them.
right. And then after the fact, you know, you sit back and you think like, what was I thinking? Like, was I just blind? Was I not paying attention? But, you know, it all goes back to I rushed that second relationship because the first relationship, I was looking for something. I was looking for someone that would accept me. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah.
I felt the rejection from that first marriage, and it really hurt me. It really messed with me. You know, like we had been together between marriage and relationship. I mean, it was almost 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, and like to have someone just not want to be with you, that's hard.
Yeah.
And I think that all that poured into this, and I just rushed all of it and made a huge mistake. And, you know, I hope that she's happy now. We still, you know, I don't talk to her. She doesn't talk to me. Like, that's one relationship. Like, there's nothing there.
Yeah. There's no point to it.
Yeah. And we didn't have any kids together, so there's no ties or anything. But it's still really hard because, you know, you feel like you're definitely a key part of that blame of like, you know, did I do most of this by rushing that?
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to figure that all out. And like we're going through this divorce and COVID.
Mm.
So like even the divorce was odd because we did it virtually. We didn't go to a courthouse, nothing. The court called us on a phone and we did it like watching them.
Damn, really?
Yeah. And it was crazy, like all of it. And we get divorced on her birthday. So, you know, that doesn't make it any better either.
Yeah.
You know,
so sour taste with that birthday now.
Yeah. But, you know, like, here's the thing is like the first marriage, I completely like gave everything that, other than the house, like she took everything that she wanted, you know, so I started over. The second marriage, same thing, like took most stuff. I just completely I was just trying to get out of the house, didn't care. And so my daughter, you know, we moved into my brother's house because he had a vacant house. So I just moved into that until I found a place. And I was trying to like figure out my life at that point, you know, like it's me and my daughter. She's you know, in middle school at this point, or, you know, it's right at middle school. And I'm like, man, I was like, we've got to stop moving. Like at this point, my daughter is, you know, let's see, this is 2020. So she's 12 years old.
And so, yeah, so it's hard for her to understand all this stuff.
Yeah. And I feel so bad because now, so the house she grew up in, I just sold. And we bought this lake house together. But before that, we were renting a house while we were waiting on the lake house. So that's 3 houses she's been in no time, like 2 years.
Yeah.
Then we're getting divorced. I'm moving again. And we move in my brother's house. That's 4 times.
Yeah. You're not going to be there forever.
Yeah. And now I'm trying to find a house to buy. So this is the 5th house she's going to live in like 2 years, you know? And I'm like, I feel 2-3 years. And I was like, that's the thing. And I was like, so my daughter, you know, me and her talking, she's like, Dad, I don't want to move again until I graduate. I said, done. I said, we'll pick a house out together.
And that's what you did.
And we picked a house out together, and I still live in that house today.
Nice.
And, you know, and I asked her, I said, you want to live on the lake or do you want a pool? She picked a pool. So we bought a house, and I put a pool in immediately.
Hell yeah.
That's been our thing. I sold my boat, you know, and it was like during COVID. So that was interesting trying to find a house and everything in COVID, but it all worked. And then like from that point, just month after month, man, I just bought something for the house. Our house was empty.
Yeah.
I had a couch and a bed.
Yeah.
And she had a bed. and her little bedroom suit. And that was it. Like, I bought dishes, I bought silverware, you know, like every month we were just buying stuff and building this house back. And like, you know, you sit back and you think, you're like, I did that twice.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. And at that point in my life, I was like, I knew that I'd screwed up by rushing that second marriage. You know, I have no hard feelings or blame for either of my marriages now, because something caused all of that to happen.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
And it's like, what did I do and what do I do different?
Yeah. So what did you learn from all that?
So exactly. And that was that, you know, stop and just breathe and realize that you don't have to make a decision for anything. The first thing you need to do is find out why. Like, why are you rushing this? Why are you trying to find someone? Why are you worried at this point about that they didn't want you? What you need to be worrying about is how do you fix it so that the next relationship you're in, you'll appreciate this person, and also see. You know, that's the other thing, is like be able to actually see if this is the person for you.
100%.
You know, we all, in a way, want to see the best in people, but you also got to be willing to see the worst in people to know that it's, you know, and you got to put those goggles on sometimes. And that was one of the things that I realized that was real hard for me. It was like all that was put in place, I think, to help me appreciate where I'm at today and the relationship I'm at today, because it's the best relationship I've ever been in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's just amazing. But I wouldn't be there if I didn't appreciate the other shit that happened.
100%.
And, you know, I took almost like 9 months. I think it was almost like 9 months from that divorce and everything, after the divorce was final, before I even went on a date with anybody.
Yeah.
Like, that was not like
Gave
that,
it time.
That was my thing. I was like, you need to stop and just fix your life. Like, let your life be just you and your daughter, and, you know, like, let it be.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I focused on. You know, we just did our thing. And, you know, at one point, it was so funny. I shouldn't even say this, but at one point, like, I was like, I think I want to go on a date. So I tried like a dating app.
Tinder or something.
Oh man, no, it was like one with a B.
Bumble.
Yeah. No. So the dating app was like 0-3. I went on 3 dates, and I was just like, nope. And, you know, and in a way, I just deleted the app, but in a way, it made me feel like I might have found myself.
Yeah.
Because as I'm sitting there on this date, I'm like, no. Just in my mind, I'm like, this is not the person for you, so don't waste your time.
Good shit.
And you don't get to that point until you've had some really hard discussions with yourself and hard decisions on, you know, this bad marriage. What the hell, you know, what did you do? Like, look at this puzzle and try to figure out. And that's the thing. It's like all these little signs that I should have saw in the first marriage that were breaking apart, which was like communication, not talking about our problems, going to bed mad. You know, when you get upset at each other, you focus on the kid.
Yeah.
You know, and like all that shit is like, you have to learn. You've got to be better. And then the second marriage was like, I rushed. I wasn't ready. I did all this stuff, and then I was just blind to everything happening because I didn't want to be the guy that gets 2 divorces.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, life is so short.
It is.
And that was what made my decision to tell her in that kitchen that day as she was sitting there talking. I was like, you know what? It's not fair to her if I don't let her take this job.
Yeah.
Because this job was insurance. This job was everything, you know, and I was like, and that's why it just hit me. I was like, this isn't going to last. Even if it does last another year, it's not fair for me to say. So I never said that to anybody other than on this podcast, but like, it was like, we should get a divorce. And that was the reason. It was like, I didn't want to feel like I told her something. Oh no, we're fine. You don't have to worry about it. Don't take the job. We're good.
Yeah.
No, it was like, you should take the job and we should get divorced, because that's where, at this point, I'm starting to figure a little bit out about what I want.
You answered that feeling.
Yeah.
You know, you were able to speak it up instead of like just bearing it down. You know, that's where I screwed up. Like I told you in my last relationship with the house. Before we did that, I had a feeling in my gut. I was like, I don't think this is a good idea, but I did it anyways. So I can't blame her. Like, I still made the choice to pursue that and take those steps. When in my heart, I knew they weren't the right steps. Why? Because I think I'm a hero and I can save it, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys are like that. We can save this thing, especially romantic types. And when in reality, you know, like, I knew it wasn't the right call.
Right.
But
and it's very hard to like accept that. You know, that's the thing. It's like hard to accept that you can't fix it.
yeah. You know, one thing I learned has been the most valuable, and like it's a piece of advice I give anybody like that asked once, you know, like maybe trying to get in a relationship or something. I'm like, when you meet a person, just be an open book and tell your expectations. And so when I met Lydia, I just was like, listen, it's like I just cut my arm and like let it bleed out. I was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm all about. This is what I believe in. This. Put it all on the table. And this is what I want. This is what I want to do in my life. This is my expectation in a marriage. This is my expectation in a relationship. This is how I want my kid. You know,
Yeah.
I just said, this is like what I'm all about. And it clicked.
Well, you know, and it's you've accepted that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like you have to be able to accept who you are.
You have to get to a point, though. You have to go through the
Yes.
bad. I went through 2 engagements, so I kind of dodged a bullet.
Yeah,
like you,
yeah.
like I called off 2 engagements, but you know, I got lucky.
Yeah.
But still, it's still hard lessons.
Right.
And there's still those connections, and the relationship was still built. It just wasn't on paper, being
I
married.
was going to say, at that point, when you're engaged, your lives are already intertwined.
Exactly. And
You don't have the piece of paper,
yeah.
but it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's still hard.
But you're told in relationships, you get to a point like a year in a relationship, and they're like, well, I don't like this. I don't like that. And it's like, well, you didn't tell me that. And it's like, well, it wasn't my place early on. And that's where people screw up. It's like, yeah, it's your place. If you see a future, a lifetime with this person, possibly, then fucking speak up. Because if you don't, you're going to have to approach it at some point.
100%.
And then you're further in, and then it's harder to walk away rather than being like, well, this ain't your thing. That's not what you're about. Fine. But like, let's go ahead and save each other the trouble. And that's like this. So that's like a piece I like to pass to people, because like, that's what I've learned. I was like, you know what? I got to the point where I met Lydia. I was like, listen, I'm tired of fucking around. Like, you know, I've been coping in this way since my last relationship, but like, if you want something serious, this is where I'm at. Because I was already blown away by her looks and the energy and the connection. But I had to put that out there too. And it, firing on all cylinders is beautiful, right? So
Absolutely. Well, and and that's the thing. It's like you have to be yourself.
yeah.
Period.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you're building a business. It doesn't matter if you're meeting the biggest client that you're ever going to land,
Yeah.
or a sponsorship, or your future wife that you don't realize who that's you're meeting. You need to be yourself, and that's the one thing I've learned is like you get 100% David Compton all the time, whether you're on or off. You know, like that's it. That's all there is. Because at the end of the day, if I put on any type of show or I just ignore things, that relationship's not going to be the 100% that it could be. And you know what? If we don't match, then I don't want that person as a client, or I don't want that company. I don't want to work for that guy. And that's the thing. It's like, be yourself 100% of the time, and you're going to find the right people or the right places in your life, because the people that are around want you for you.
Yeah. That's
not for anything else.
Oh, yeah. That's going to speak so much volumes about you as well. I think people, whether they agree with you or not on certain things, people appreciate authenticity.
Yes.
And that's the key in business, it's the key in relationships, the key in everything. And people don't like authenticity, but then honestly, I don't want that around me, because then if you're not authentic, then you're fake. Right. There's 2 sides, right? Or you're wearing a mask and you need to peel that off, right? And we're always peeling off masks, I think, as we grow. But still, yeah, I think that authenticity. And so you got to a point to where you now are able to do that. And I think it just took those trials. But people get rushed in that time. And like, dude, while it sucks you had 2 divorces, at the same time, imagine being married to one person you're miserable with your whole life. because a lot of people do that.
Yes.
And then that's what I got a saying, I put it on a shirt, and I don't know where I heard it, but it's comfort is a slow death. And you're just comfortable, but you're slowly dying on the inside. And then you lose yourself along the way.
Yeah. And life is so short. You just, to be miserable for 20 something years. I have a friend, they got divorced after 27, 28 years of marriage.
Screw that.
So, it's one of those, like, in your mind, you accept it, and you're like, okay, well, this is just life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean at any other time that other person's going to decide, well, it's been 27 years, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, sometimes you have to do what's best for you.
Yeah.
Actually, I should say most of the time. Like, you need to put yourself forward and your best self forward and be who you are, because you're not giving the people that are truly close to you a fighting chance to really know you if you're not being yourself all the time.
Facts. And I think, with that is like we all grow, we all evolve, right, throughout the rest of our lives. And I think, personally, my thought process on this, just after discussing this with people in so many different ways, but, you get to that point where you're almost 30 years in and you get a divorce. Well, you obviously put in that time, and maybe some people just shut up and they just sit there and they're like, I'm married, this is what it is. And they go watch the football game and they're like, man, my wife, my ball and chain. And like, I never sit with anybody and discuss my wife in a negative way. I actually despise that people do that, because I'm like, well, you're not happy. Like, but you're talking about your wife negatively, and I'll never do that. And, but I think it gets to a point to where that's where it circles back to the communication aspect, because if you're willing to communicate, and even if there's an argument, but if you work through it, after emotions settle, then you grow together. And keeping that communication open, you're able to grow together. So 20, 30 years in, you've kept that dialogue open, and you just become an evolution into one, and then you're stronger than ever.
Absolutely.
But instead, people don't really communicate how they feel on certain things because they're afraid of the confrontation or whatever. And they're afraid of looking at themselves and fixing their problems. People are like, no, it's just how I am. It's like, no, dude, we all got shit to fix. And you got to be willing to do that kind of stuff. And then you get down the road and you're like, man, I've been married 30 years and I love this person more than the day I met them.
Well, and you have to be vulnerable.
Yep.
And that's the thing that most people have such a hard problem with. Even like coming on this podcast, you have to be vulnerable. If you're not going to do it, then you're not going to get to really tell the true story.
Yeah.
You have to be able to share those experiences. And the person that you're with, and I still have some problems with talking about certain things, even with Mary, we're dudes. We don't share every emotion that goes through us, and like that's.
I'm pretty like, but
it's like, but I'm getting better at it, and I really try, and the big stuff, anyways, and that's one of the things that I took away from those two marriages was like, man, the little shit doesn't bother me,
and that's the thing, and the little shit shouldn't bother you, It's like there's going to be the little shit. But it's okay.
Yeah, she'll, we'll have conversations every night. She's like, if I ever, and I'm like, that stuff doesn't bother me. I was like, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I don't care at all. Like, it's when you're trying to like integrate two lives, early on, you're like, oh, but I was like, none of that stuff matters to me.
Yeah, dude, there's no eggshells here. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think, a lot of things come up too. You talked about being uncomfortable about maybe approaching this or that. And I think that's just like a result of like past relationships that you don't realize are affecting you still sometimes. I still uncover things. My wife and I have a discussion and we'll be talking about whatever the topic is. And I have certain habits or just conditions that it's not because of her I feel that way. It's because of these past relationships that I still feel that way.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, well, that's a problem. I need to fix that. Now I'm aware of it. And so then we work through that together. But she also doesn't get offended that like I feel that way. She also knows that too. So like I think understanding those things, the bigger picture, like can really help you evolve into something powerful.
It's so funny too because you realize it when it happens. Like you feel that trigger and you're like, oh, because I'll have a conversation here and there with her and all of a sudden I get this like just mixed emotions coming through and I'm like, this was a conversation we had all the time in my second marriage, which was awful. Like, we were just like all, it's so toxic, and it was like always having this one conversation. So every now and then when that conversation would come up, I'd be like,
makes you uneasy.
Yeah. And she didn't mean anything by it. She's like, are you okay? And I told her the story, and she's like, oh, I see why the last couple of times I've said that you've like had this look on your face. I'm like, yeah, it's not you. It just, you saying it, you don't mean anything by it, but you say it in a way that triggers that.
Yeah, it brings back an emotion because I can connect it with this situation where it ultimately turned out bad or negatively, right? So, yeah, but it's cool. It's honestly pretty badass to be able to like recognize those things.
Absolutely.
That awareness, man. But anyways, we're discussing some pretty deep topics, really about relationships. And I think it's important to highlight that, we've had our own experiences and rocky roads, to get in the relationships we have now. And like, we obviously, found our place. Yeah. Right.
Well, and it's one of those where you have to have that stuff happen in your life to find out who you're going to be. It leads you to where you're at. And like, I wouldn't be sitting here today if that stuff wouldn't have happened, because I started really running to deal with that. So in this second marriage, I start running 100-milers.
Yeah.
Ran my first 100-miler in like 2018, 2019, somewhere around in there. I don't remember exactly. And then 2020, we get divorced. But somewhere in 2019, 2020 is when I was like, my buddy Mike's there, and I'm like, hey, man, I think we should start race directing. I think we should start a company. We should, let's do it. Let's do it. And it took me a long time to talk him into this. He was like reluctant to it, didn't really want to do it, but finally I got him talked into it, and we started East Coast Adventures. And the very first event we go to put on, COVID hits.
Damn.
Everything gets canceled. We're like rescheduling. We figure it out, and we get it moved into another one. But it was the race called Port Frenzy. We still do it to this day. It is in August, because that's where it got moved to during COVID, and we just never moved it.
Yeah.
But we formed a lot of, me and him became close during all of this, and we started running a lot. He's a runner too. And as I finished that second divorce, we're, getting through all that. And I told you I went like 9 months without even like a relationship, et cetera, trying not to do any of that. But man, I went down a rabbit hole of just like racing to deal with it. Like I was running, I was going crazy. Every weekend I didn't have my daughter. I was at an event. I was doing something. And, that just continued. I finally get into another relationship. It didn't last long. We both, obviously she had past divorces. I did too. And I knew what I didn't want. And, we just kind of moved on. And, but after that, we'd been together for a couple months, several months on and off. And it just never really got that serious. Like at some point, like you realize like that's not your person.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of like this journey is learning what you do and don't want. And, we just we don't even really talk anymore. But after that, it really just set me on a tear again of like, I went that whole year and just raced.
Yeah.
And that was like 2022. I ran all kinds of events, man. Like at one point I ran, there's a race called Georgia Jewel. I did it. And these are like August, September, October.
Yeah.
So I did like four events, and one of them was a 12-hour, and I ended up winning it. It was the dirt circuit, which is a race that now we run. We actually put this race on now. We took it over from the race director, and when I was running it, it was their last year, and he gave it to me for East Coast Adventure. So we took it. But, I ran Georgia Jewel, run dirt circuit, ran No Business, and then run Firewater. And then I turn around a month later and run one of the hardest races of my life. It's called Blood Rock, and it's a 100-miler in Alabama, 22,000 feet elevation gain. It took me 30 hours. I line up beside, there's a pretty famous runner. His name's Carl Meltzer. They call him the Speed Goat, but he's there. Me and him both finished. I was third. He was first. We were, raced the first lap. I never saw him after that. He kind of left me behind. But it was one of those where I was like, I was using that as my platform to just try to solve the problems in my head. And I didn't realize that's also what I was doing. I was just running.
Yeah.
But that was kind of how I was dealing with all of it, trying to just like accept it.
Which is a positive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And And, all of that led to, East Coast Adventures. We brought on a guy named Matt. He started running in our races, Matthew, and now he's a race director with us. He's actually my co-host on the podcast now, and so you just form all these relationships, and you start meeting all these people, and, I'm doing all these events and just meeting more and more people. And, it's people are starting to reach out. They're like, hey, how are you winning these races and staying healthy and doing all this? And, I've tried that and I got hurt. We all want to be that person that thinks that we're going to do this and not get hurt. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just doing yoga and workout and run. I do all three. And then like a month later, I end up with rhabdo in the hospital. Kidneys are shut. I'm in kidney failure.
Going so hard.
And what's crazy is this is like, I'd met my girlfriend now at a race called Firewater. And we met at that event, and we've worked this event for years. We'd never talked. Yeah. Never met. We meet, and now, we've been together for, a while now, and we're, like I said, best relationship I've ever been in. Yeah. And this is the very first event she comes to with me. And like, I'm halfway into this event. I'm 12 hours in. I'm winning the event, and I'm cramping everywhere. It started like at mile 2, and my body's just cramping. And I just keep running. And finally, like 12 hours in, I'm like, something's not right. We got to go to the hospital. And at this point, she's already like, I didn't realize she's calling doctors, like some of her clients. She's a coach, so she had called and asked a couple people, and they're like, doesn't sound good. You might need to, they're already telling her. So we get to the hospital, and we find out I'm in rhabdo. And I didn't really know a lot about rhabdo. I'd heard of it. Rhabdo became famous during CrossFit.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and the doctor walks in, he's like, we're going to admit you to the hospital for like at least 5 days. We're going to have to give you fluids.
That shit'll mess you up, man.
Yeah, he's like, you're in rhabdo. And, me and my girlfriend are sitting there, and she's like, yeah, but I guarantee you, like, most of those runners over there are in rhabdo because they've been running for 12 hours. Yeah. And he's like, you're right. I agree with you. But he's in renal failure. Oh. And I was like, okay. So I'm sitting here, and I'm like, and I talked to, we were talking to the doctor, and I said, that's fine, yeah. And as I'm sitting there, I look at her, and I'm like, I don't want to stay. I do not want to stay. I want to go home. And we talked to the doctor, and the doctor finally agrees to let me go home, which he was reluctant to, but as long as I drank my electrolytes and went and got checked the next day. So we get out of that, and, I get home, and I go to the next day and check my creatine level at the hospital, and it's like down to a 1.7. Which is, they said, it's improvement. I took the blood work from the previous one, so, they could see it. And, and from that, it was just a journey of recovery and understanding that your body can only take so much.
Yeah. How long did that take you to bounce back?
So
it usually takes a while.
Yeah. I was going to say, this is where I screwed up. A month later, I signed up for another event. So I'm like 2-3 weeks in, and then I start back to training, and all of 2023 was just like a shit show because I refused to let myself rest. Yeah. And, Mary helped me a lot with that. It was one of those where she was like, you've got to calm down. You got to rest. You're not training. You're not even training. All you're doing is racing. And, but I had like hip issues. I had cramps. I never got any stress fractures or anything, but, I had all kinds of so I started seeing a chiropractor. I'm going to a chiropractor just so I can run. That's when I do this 300-mile race that I have tattooed on my arm as well, is in 2023.
Damn.
So,
you're able to accomplish that in the midst of this?
Yeah. And, and there's a fine line between being tough and being stupid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you have to learn that. And, none of us ever want to, accept that we're going to give up. But at some point, if you're truly injuring yourself, you need to stop because all you're going to do is prolong that recovery. Man. And finally, after Vol State, I do one more race, and it's like I'm at no business, this is the race now. The previous year, I'd podiumed. I had a really good race, and I'm back, and I'm like, I'm ready. I got this. I DNF'd it, mile 50, rolled my ankle on a bridge.
Was that this recent one?
No.
This is okay.
This was last year.
Yeah.
And that made me take a break. And finally, me and Mary talked, and, so I took the whole month off and didn't do anything, let my foot heal, and we slowly started training. And I just picked a race in March of this year, and that's what we focused on, and I trained for it. And then I picked a race in the spring, which was Yeti 50, and I ended up winning it. But I only trained for that race, and I didn't do all this other crazy stuff. So it's been all this year that's been like the learning curve of like, you can run or you can race.
Yeah.
And it's whatever you prefer. You know, some people just want to go run and have fun and just chill, you know, and that's great. I want to go race.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to push myself and see what I am capable of.
Yeah.
Not for
you want to compete.
Yeah, not for that medal, but I want to be the best that I can be.
Yeah.
And I want to continue to get better every day, and like that's what I'm focused on. And she's helping me with that. And you know, and the only way you do that is recovery, man. Recovery has to be there. Like you have to train hard and recover, and then train hard and recover, and it's just cycles. And
I think the mental health, your mental place is the same way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, exactly.
Well, I'll get to that, but I'll let you finish.
But you know, we get all the way up to this race. Like now, I've trained for months to get to a fast 100 miler. So I was supposed to run Yeti 100. So Yeti 50 went really well for me. I ran that 50 miles in like 6.5 hours.
Yeah.
And then Yeti 100 was this fall, but that was the same time as the flood.
Yeah.
And we get evacuated.
Oh,
the day that my race was supposed to be.
Yeah, you were sending me videos and shit. I didn't even realize it was that bad, man.
You know, and I had no idea it was going on anywhere else.
Yeah.
No idea till we get out of there. But so I lost that race, you know, and I didn't really, you can't be upset about that because you can't control any of this stuff. But man, it was like 9 months of work.
Yeah.
To run this really fast 100. So then I switched gears. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to run Pinhoti 100. I'm going to run this trail race. So, you know, we just keep training. And, you know, it's a month and a half later. And then I go this past weekend and run that race. And mile one, I rolled my ankle.
Mile one.
And, you know, you're just like, I just take a deep breath and I just keep running. And I think about no business last year. And I'm like, I DNF'd because of my foot. That's not happening this year. I'm going to go. Yeah. I'm in the best shape of my life, period. I've got this. And I ran 56 miles on a bum foot, rolled it like 3 more times up to mile 43. And then from mile 43 to 57, we just kind of lost all stability. My girlfriend Mary was with me. She paced me during that time, and I bet I rolled my ankle 12 times. At one point, I just looked at her and I said, if I roll my ankle one more time, I think I'm going to cry. She said, I thought you were going to the last time.
How bad did that shit hurt, man? Like running that far on a rolled ankle, though.
So mile 1.5 is when it rolled, and it popped, and I felt it tear. And I felt burning immediately. And it burned the entire time I ran. And at one point, like when I get to mile 8, you know, Staмен's there and Mary's there. And I run in and I told him I rolled my ankle. It's the first time I saw him. And at that point, it was already red and growing out of up my shin, you know. And, you know, Stamen did a good job of taking progression pictures. So he's got it all.
Yeah.
But it finally just got to the point, like at mile 57, which was the last time, that's where I dropped at the last cruise station. But it just got to the point, it got so big and so sore that I couldn't bend it in any direction.
Yeah.
So I went from like 10 to 12-minute miles slowly down to like 23-minute miles. And then at that point, you just have to like accept defeat. You're like, it's just stupid at this point. So we called like a podiatrist, we called the chiropractor, and, you know, they both said you should stop.
You know what, though? I think that's, like, badass you kept going.
Well, thank you.
Like, you know, obviously, from, like, a doctor standpoint, it's like, hey, dude, you're causing more damage. But to me, I'm like, hell yeah. Like, you just kept rolling. I mean, hell, 57 miles on your ankle like that. Like, that's pretty impressive, dude.
You know, and there's certain people in your life that are, like, they're there to help you be the best you can be.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mary and Chris they're like my calm.
Yeah.
They're the guys that no matter what happens, like I know I can work through anything.
Mm-hmm.
And our chiropractor that me and Mary both use, he's kind of the same way, but she sent him that picture. He's asleep. He wakes up and calls immediately. And the first question that comes out of his mouth, I love it, is David winning? And she started laughing. She's like, no, he's not winning at this point. Then he should quit because he's already done enough damage. But if he was winning, I was going to talk you through what we can do to get him to the end. And, you know, and that's the people that you want. Like,
yeah.
That's what you need. You don't want someone that's going to sit there and tell you to stop. You know, Chris and Mary, they weren't saying a word about my foot. They weren't going to talk about it. I knew it. Like they didn't want me to take my shoe off. They didn't say a word about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know Chris was even taking those pictures till the end.
They know that wouldn't have been a good idea.
Yeah.
you know, you gotta hit that point. You know, I it's almost, I can connect it with this, you know, like not long ago, I ended up in the hospital because of like blood pressure, you know, and I had to go, man, it was getting high. I could feel the palpitations. And then like a week later, we were going to dinner, and we were in my truck, and like my nose just started gushing blood. I filled up a whole diaper. It's never happened. And my wife, you know, she started tearing up on the, you know, when we were driving from the restaurant. She was like, Joe, I don't know what we'd do without you. And I was like, fuck. And then that 2 days later, that morning, I was going to go to the VA, and dude, my vision was like blurring. I was trying to work, but it was like all sluggish and like delayed. And I was like, dude, something's not right. And I just feel like the palpitations. Yeah. And drove up to the VA. My freaking blood pressure was like over 200. Like, you know, they were like, yeah, we need to get you on medication. And the doctor's like, listen, you got a graft. Like, that's good and all, but like, it's not meant for that kind of blood pressure, and you're young. So we got to watch this. And it was like, I had to push myself to that point. Here's the thing. It translates because like mentally with work and all that stuff, like I'll push and push and push.
Yes.
My wife's going to tell me to keep going because she knows me. If she tells me to stop, it's going to do more damage than good. But she also like knows when the time is to be like, hey, you know, and like at that moment in the truck. Yes. And I was like, fuck, you know, she's right. And so it's just, it makes, I connect with it on that because like, she's going to be coaching me, like pushing me along. Yeah. Even if she sees how stressed I am and how hard I'm going, and just like with everything I do, you know, I need someone to push me.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's the thing. It's like we're all driving in the middle of the road on this line.
Yeah.
And that line is tough. I can do it. I got this. And okay, it's stupid.
Yeah.
At this point. Like, and, you know, and it's a very fine line because like, you push too hard and you do hurt yourself in so many ways, emotionally, physically, etc. And, you know, that's that fine line that we're all trying to find because you don't want to be extremely in one or the other.
Yeah.
You're not living unless you're somewhere in that middle, you know, and you're like pushing that.
One, I think it's crazy is because often I see like people on opposite ends of the spectrum, you know, but actually trying to find that place is like, because it takes effort. You know, you have to be intentional about it. Like I have to recover by going out to Machine Falls and just sitting out in the waterfall at 6 a.m. before I come into work a full day and meditating for an hour. Like that's my recovery on this. Right. And so, you know,
absolutely
same thing as you doing recovery on like taking care of yourself so you can keep running. I have to do things like that or I'm going to crash, you know, and then I have a freaking heart attack. I got a crazy story. I don't want to add a stroke to that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like that kind of thing. And so we're just trying to find that line, but where you want to push.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's a fine line.
It is.
You know what I love the most about your story?
What's that?
Is that you grabbed a diaper to stop the blood. That's
what we had.
You're a dad. I love it.
Yeah, dude, it's funny, man. I was like, damn, this thing soaks up a lot of blood. It was, it worked out well. So I'm just holding a diaper over my face, man. I'm like, dude, I'm filled up a diaper with blood. Yeah.
Super absorbents.
Yeah, dude, they are, man.
Very smart, man.
It worked out well. Shoot, I would have just like wiped it on my shirt, but she was like, she's the one that got a diaper. I wouldn't even thought to do that.
Genius.
Genius. Yeah, man. Moms, they're very resourceful when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so I think what's cool about that is like maybe not everybody can relate to you as far as running goes, right? But my way to relate to you is like through the mental push. And like, I think a lot of people can connect there or in whatever whether it's emotional or whatever, they can understand your story on their own level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey, man, push limits, sure, but like understand where to like.
Well,
I don't like to say throw in the white towel because I don't never surrender, right? But
but you know, like that comes with your purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and you can have multiple purposes. It's more than a hobby. Like it's whatever your career is, whatever your life is, your purpose.
Yeah.
And a lot of times your purpose is what's causing you to push on that fine line.
100%.
And, you know, to be able to endure that, not just running, but be able to endure that, you have to have a passion and you have to care. And it's like, if you care that much, you're not going to give up. But it's knowing where that line is, it's so hard to find. You know?
And that's the key is endurance. Mm-hmm. Rather than trying to sprint to the end.
Yes.
And definitely don't just sit there, like finding, like raising that endurance. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, what's that pace I can keep, still fucking put out the most and accomplish my goals, right? And you build that over time. I think you become more capable.
But you do that with anything. You know, like that's if you start out too fast on anything, you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah, if you're like you're at that level and you push a little past here, well, then you're going to go down here. So then you got to work your way back up. So I think just evolving. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
See? Yeah, we're on the same page.
Dude, I love it. I love it, man. So, but we are, at the end of this last segment. We've done 4 amazing segments. And dude,
I feel like I've talked a lot.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do. I talk a lot too, but I like to keep it conversational, man. I don't want it to be just an interview where you're sitting there.
No,
like,
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. Because I like building this connection, man. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, dude, I'm glad you talked a lot. That's what I wanted. If you didn't talk a lot, I was gonna be like, all right, I just have to squash this one, make it a mini. No, I'm just kidding.
This is a clip.
Yeah, this is a clip for something that might happen one day. No, but no, it's been a lot of fun, man. Is there anything else you want to cover before, the end, before I ask, final questions and whatnot?
I mean, I will say this. Having good people in my life over the last few years has made such a dramatic change in just me in general, as far as like being able to do these things and being able to branch out and like push, and even just having the courage to, to start East Coast Adventures or to, start your life over. And that's the thing. It's like you've learned everything through all these hardships. So this is the one thing that I will say is don't ever be afraid to start over.
Yeah.
Like me starting over so many times has led to me having so many good relationships.
Yeah.
And, even with my daughter, like she is so kind and she understands like how important running is to me. So like she understands if she's home and I got a race that weekend, like she knows it's important and she understands that, but she also knows that I'll pay that back to her when basketball season starts and like that stuff, and I'll be there. So, sometimes she comes. So to me, it's like such an important thing for people to realize that balance. Yeah. It's like, you can start completely over. Believe me, life comes back into balance. That's not the end. Like you may feel like, if your significant other has cheated on you or you lose your job or whatever, like that's all in your control at that point of what you do moving forward. And it took me a long time to like truly feel like now I get it. Yeah. Like there is nothing that you can throw at me that, I can't try to figure out or try to resolve. And it just, unfortunately, that's that endurance of like just learning. Yeah. Learning to accept defeat and rejection and move on and like, okay, how do I keep this from happening again? And like, I say this a lot to people that ask me like, how do you train for a 100-miler? Like, what do you do? And I'm like, I mean, you just need discipline. You just need to run every day. And then don't be afraid to show up at the start line because that's what happens is like that fear sets in and you find an excuse not to show up. The hardest thing you can ever do is show up, and that's in anything.
Oh, facts. Yep. Dude, I love that, man. And then, to add on to that is the consistency because that shit's not going to happen overnight. You got to be consistent in order to like get to that line, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people start running with a goal in mind and they're like, screw this. Yeah. You got to be consistent. But that's like ties in with discipline as well. Like those tying together perfectly. Yeah. And it's funny because, I hate that we're into this. We're going to have to do this again. I think there's going to be a good time and place for it because I want to ask you about fatherhood and stuff like that. I love talking to fellow dads, especially being a girl dad. So there's nothing like it. It's powerful. And so I do want to talk more about those topics and everything. And there's something you said I want to say too. You talked about like you're going to pay your daughter back like in the basketball season and whatnot. And I think, because we go through life and like say we're in a relationship, right? We're not always going to have the same interests. Like my wife and I have a lot of different interests, right? But we want to be a part of each other's lives. So that just goes to say like, hey, if you got an interest in your relationship, like it's not all about you and your interests. Like you got to pour into each other's, exactly. Even if it's not your thing, like make it your thing now for them. And if you're able to give or like be serving in that way, well, then that's just going to come back. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And And, I got to say, I'm very fortunate there because, like, Mary is amazing. She supports me in my races. I try to support her in hers. Now, granted, she doesn't race nowhere as crazy as much as I do, but, like, we help each other, and it's that team.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing I want my daughter to understand at the end of the day, because I feel like there's this, somehow we've gotten to the point in this world where, like, every parent thinks they have to be at everything for their kid.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't. And, like, to set that expectation is not good, in my opinion, because, like, your kids should not expect you to be at every event that they have or everything that they do or every class that they go to. Like, life happens.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, I want her to understand is, like, if I have something going on that's important to me, I need to go to it. But I will be at the next one for you. And, like, that's the thing. It's like, understand that I can't be at everything, because when you have kids one day, I want you to understand that, like, this isn't normal. Like, you can't be 7 days a week doing everything for your kid. It's super unhealthy. It's not good. It's a balance.
You lose yourself in it. Yeah.
Right. And I see that a lot too.
You do, but yeah, exactly. Because it's like you lose yourself, you lose your interest. And, like, you're also teaching your kids that, like, hey, one day when you have kids, you got to stop doing what you love.
Yeah.
And I hear it. People are like, oh, well, they got their thing, so I don't do my stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of miserable, and you're passing that down.
Yeah.
Like, you still got to, like, fill your cup. Yeah, okay, I get it. Your kids fill your cup, but also there's things that you have your interest in. You're not going to run out there and start playing soccer with little kids or football and just laying them out. Probably get your ass in trouble. So find shit that you love and you're passionate about for you. It's okay. But
what you truly have to understand at this point is, like, if you pour everything you have into your kids. So you're married, you're happily married, both of you are pouring everything you have into your kids. And you lose yourself. You're going to be the most unhappy, miserable person there is in about 3 years.
Yep.
And you're not going to be good for anybody. And, like, that's the thing that you have to realize, like, you have to do the certain things that are you. Mm-hmm. And if that's running an event, if that's doing a podcast, if that's riding, if that's swimming, like, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that is you have to keep that, because if you are not at 100% mentally for you, you're no good to anybody else.
That's a fact.
And that is, I feel like, is what we're starting to lose now. Is everybody thinks they have to be at everything for everyone. And, I'll say this, like, I pour myself into a lot of events, like, probably more than I should, because I want to help this community. I want to help the running community, the ultra endurance community. So I'm volunteering stuff all the time. And, I probably should slow that down some, because I know it's becoming too much. But at the same time, that also helps me be me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like it's just that, it's the same thing. It's like that fine line. You don't want to go overboard, but you also need it. So don't just give it away, because you need it for your kids to see that this stuff is normal.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I love it, man. I just want to take off on this subject, honestly, for another 30, 45 minutes. Because my wife, I traveled the last 5 weekends, and I'm out there volunteering. I'm just like, I talked to you about, like, just the hope just impacting people. And I find so much joy there. Like, that feeds me in so many ways, but it's also bigger than me. And I'm like, so fiery about it. But my wife needs my time, because I will be so intensively, like, just consumed by something and obsessed to where I create, like, it's almost like my identity, and I'm all in. That's great and all, but she's also not afraid to be like, hey, I need your time though. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, there's that one, it's that communication. I'm like, you know what? You're right. You support me. Like, we can't take my 18-month-old daughter out there, So like, she would be there with me if she could. My wife would, but I'm like, you know what? You're right. And so I'm going to be here this weekend. I'm going to do, I'm going to spread it out a little bit more, because you support me in everything. And so it's like, that's that balance, right? Because I can't sit there and be like, well, this is bigger than you. These people are devastated. Like, you're just going to have to wait. Because that would be wrong of me, because that's all, I got to pour into that. But also, I can't be okay if she was like, hey, I don't want you going to do that. Well, then you're taking away from who I am, right? Yes. So being able to, like, communicate that and find that together. And I think that's, that's an important lesson there, because a lot of people do things just for their kids too. You're like, oh, man, it's all about the kids. And it's like, yeah, well, that's why your marriage fell apart. People don't want to face that. Why? Because I guess I told my wife this since the beginning, since we had our daughter, like since the very beginning, I'm like, listen, you're always number one. Because if I don't prioritize you over, you know, I mean, I'm not saying my daughter's lesser than, but you get what I'm saying. You're number one. Why? Because that's the foundation. And if that falls apart, then what good is that for her?
Right.
Right? So we got to focus on each other first, because in reality, that just affects her. Yeah. So
no, I agree with that 100%, because like if you are, you know, if you have a child from a relationship and then you put that child first, the marriage just falls apart.
You see it all the time.
And then when the kid moves out at 18, what do you have? You have a dysfunctional marriage that you've lost each other somewhere along the lines. And like, you want your child to grow up and see a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
You know, that you put your wife first, you put your spouse first, whatever, your husband. Because at the end of the day, like you're setting the example for what your son or daughter expects in their marriage.
Yeah.
And if all they see is that you pour 100% of the time into your kid, guess what they're going to do when they get older?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's a cycle.
It makes you wonder if that's where we're at today.
Oh, I mean, I'd say we are big time. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a great point. And it's one of those that you have to, you know, at least you're learning it. You already know it. Like you see it and that's what you're following. And that's a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
You all can communicate and she can call you on your shit and be like, no, you're coming home this weekend. We need you.
Yeah.
You know, kudos to her for being able to do that. And kudos to you because you have set the example for her to know that she can do that.
Yeah.
You know, like you all have a good communication. And that's the stuff that I unfortunately had to learn long road to get there.
Yeah, and I had to learn on my road too, you know, for a little bit. Yeah, but exactly, right? We've had to learn these things though.
Right.
We've had to like go through shit in order, you know, suffering forces growth, right? I like to say that. Like, so it does.
Well, you know, and that's the thing, is like people are put in place. You know, I think we were talking about this before the podcast, but like there are certain events and people that are put in your life that you don't really understand why something could happen to you. But maybe that is there to help you realize later in life what you want.
Yeah.
And to be able to know what you want and to be able to make those decisions. Like with Mary, I know, you know, I'm so fortunate to have the relationship I have now because, I mean, we're 100% like a great match.
Yeah.
But we also both had a lot of shit happen that has helped us become who we are so that we can do that.
Yeah.
And we would not be the same person either way without all of that hardship.
Yep. Hell yeah, man. I love it, dude. I love it. Damn it, man. And that did want to add too, because what you said, you know, like I opened up the dialogue for her to feel comfortable doing that. Don't get me wrong. You know, I did take offense at first. I got defensive because I'm like, this is for y'all too, like energetic. And like my mindset is just where it's at. I don't expect people to see things exactly how I do too. So I did, but I was able to reel back and be like, you know what, honey, I apologize for how I reacted. You're right. Thank you for checking me on that. Because I do become obsessed with shit. Yeah. And that meant the world to her. And and then that came back, right? And then this was like, okay, we're good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to be willing to be like, you know what? People are too fucking proud to admit they're wrong too, especially in relationships. Like, I got to stay my ground and be firm. Like, no, dude, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to be prepared to be uncomfortable with yourself.
Yeah. And that's fine. You're only going to be better if you're able to do that though.
100%.
As I said, David, last thing, we'll do this again. I ask everybody this, in both your professional and your personal life, or just, you know, overall, what is your relentless pursuit?
Man, I think living a life that I believe is fulfilling, and that is that, you know, I find my soulmate, you know, I find the person that I can enjoy life with and grow old with, you know, like that's why we're here. Like we want that connection with people, but also to find someone that brings out the best in me and is kind and genuine. And, you know, I finally found that. So like my relentless pursuit is trying to always be better for not only my family, but for myself. And that's through mental and physical, just pushing myself into, let's say, like ultra running. I do that because it helps me to be better. But I feel like I'm always pursuing, like every 10 years, I'm just changing my life and trying to figure out what I'm wanting, and I think I'm still pursuing that. So that's what's interesting is like, I still don't feel like I have found my purpose, and that's the craziest thing. I was talking to someone about this the other day. It's like, we start the podcast, we start East Coast Adventures and all this stuff, and I still feel like there's something that I've not done. And, I'm trying to find that now. And I feel like with my love life, with my family life, I've finally like found that, and it's all becoming like exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
But that other pursuit is what I'm trying to find now. And it's like, what is my purpose? And I think I'm still trying to find that.
Well, man, I hope you do find it. Yeah. And I think that's a great pursuit. And honestly, the fact of the matter is that, like, you want that, you desire that, that's there. And unfortunately, most people just give up on that. Some people never figure that out because they don't put in the effort. But I think it just comes at when you least expect it. I tell people all the time, man, it took me getting hit by a car and then going through a crazy life shift after that and multiple other pieces to figure out what my true purpose was, right?
Yeah.
And it all came full circle through crazy circumstances, and I think that's the thing. It's like, just stay aware of that and keep searching for it, and it's going to come, and it's going to click, and you're going to know, like, holy shit, I know what gives me that fire.
Yeah, I'm sure when Mary listens to this, she'll be smiling because I tell her all the time, I'm like, I need to start something. I just don't know what, and I've got all these ideas everywhere, and I'm just like, I just got to pick one and go. But I'm having a hard problem with knowing, like, what is that pursuit that I really want to follow? And I haven't picked that yet. So it's funny that you asked me, like, what is my life? Because I'm still trying to find it. Like, we all want to have that person in our life that we can share that with.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that now. But now it's like, what is my purpose?
Hey, you'll figure it out, man. I have no doubts, bro. Hey, David, it was so good to have you, man. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate you taking your time. It was an honor talking to you. And I look forward to seeing what you do ahead, man. I hope that ankle heals fast, swiftly. If you got to, like, vent, feel free to text me and be like, Joe, my freaking ankle. And I'll be like, yeah, I don't know.
If you see pictures of me on social media breaking this cast off on a pole or something, you'll know something went wrong.
Yeah, deep down I'll be like, hell yeah. And you just, like, are running with a swollen ankle. I'll be like, you know what? Dude's got balls. Hey, David, I appreciate you, bro.
Yes, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right, until next time, take care.